Distance, a show where we take people from around the church and we close the gap between them and the rest of the congregation, or family, I believe is the correct term. My name's Ross Green, and today I'm lucky enough to have our first guest be none other than Pastor Jay. He is the associate pastor and young adults pastor here at Life Point Church. Jay, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
And, thank you for being on this show that I'm sure is going to be like the best show on the internet at some point.
I don't know. With the first guest, it might be a little bit hard.
Well, don't downplay yourself so much. Well, let's get right into it. So, first question right off the bat. Now, people may not know this about you, but you're actually a pretty big nerd.
I guess you can say that.
From Star Wars to Call of Duty to comic books, I've had conversations with you about all of these things. So, what really got you hooked onto these nerdy topics and things? What really grabbed your attention about them?
So this is my anthology, basically, the beginning of it,
Yes.
the prequels. Prequels tend not to go too well. A lot of people always wonder, how Star Wars gets be kind of so ingrained. But I remember watching bootleg versions of Star Wars that my dad had got because he took a camcorder to the movies, or he either did it, or either he bootlegged them off. Because you remember VCRs. I don't know how many of you remember VCRs, but you can record stuff on TV. So on Saturday mornings you record the cartoon so you can rewatch them later on. Well, he either bootlegged it from he either lied to me and just seemed cool and did it in the movie theater, because back then camcorders are like the size of a boom box.
Right. Yes.
So I don't think you can sneak that in, but I think that might have just been him just trying to seem cool. But either that or he did it on when it came on TV and aired on TV, because movies used to air for free on TV, and I know they do now. But he would record that, Indiana Jones and Star Wars. So I'd always go back, and my Star Wars started with him. He started watching them. He showed them to me, so we watched them together. And then Indiana Jones, which is another great series of movies that I really love, and that's kind of what started it for me. I remember very candidly The Phantom Menace, which is episode 1 of Star Wars. When it first came out, we went and bought the VHS because it was still on VHS. My dad went and bought Pizza Hut pizza, and it was stuffed. And I remember, this is why it resonates with me, because I remember to the detail that it was stuffed crust pizza, pepperoni, my favorite, and we watched Phantom Menace that night, me and him. So that's kind of where my love started with it. It started with my dad. It started with that, then the collecting of everything, and then I got to rewatch the episode 4, 5, and 6, which everybody knows them as the first ones that came out, but the middle ones. And then I grew up watching those, and then Phantom Menace came out. So my generation got to grow up with, the nerds got to grow up with 1, 2, and 3, and the kids of today got to grow up with 7, 8, and 9. So it's kind of neat that I was able to grow up with some form of Star Wars coming out, even though that may not be the favorites of everybody, but still it was fun to look forward to. So I guess that's kind of where it all started. Plus, my dad got into video games. He would, I think I'm the one who got into video games, and he was the one who just allowed me to play them. So I started playing video games on the N64. That was my own console, but before that I played it on Super Nintendo. So I played some of the older stuff on that. And so gaming kind of started there for me, and the love for gaming started there, just the imagination of everything, and just being able to do that. So yes, I still play video games. For some of those that may go back and watch this or do whatever, I do play with some of the youth that are out there. I do play with some of our young adults on some of these games, and I know there's a lot of debate on video games and stuff, but everything I believe has a ministry tool behind it. So I try to, when I get in there and play, just to have fun, enjoy it, but also have some time of discipleship with the game. So that's been kind of cool too. But yeah, that kind of started with Star Wars. That's why Star Wars is kind of still my thing, and still enjoy it. Still get excited when it comes out, and even have some collection of stuff that I like to do. And so that's where it kind of started for me, I guess, the nerding part of it. And then when you get into that, you build a relationship with other people that have like mind, and then that's kind of how it built for me.
That's really cool. I know personally, because like I said, we've had conversation about nerdy things before. That aspect about you is kind of what like drew me in, like, because like when you're switching over from LPYA from the youth, there's that whole like thing where you're like, and I remember thinking like, I don't really know this guy at all.
That uncanny valley of
Yeah,
not
it's
knowing
like-
what's going on.
I was like, I mean, I guess I'll go into the ping pong room and hang out with them. But being able to have those conversations with you were a really great way for me to connect with you in the beginning and sort of make me feel more comfortable. And so so when you were talking about that whole discipleship thing, I was like, oh, I get that. But in the word I can't think of. But in the interest of moving along, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next question. Now, you're also known for your love of a particular band.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and talk about Switchfoot. What got you into Switchfoot? Was it their first album, Legend of Chin, or their number one selling album, The Beautiful Letdown? What really got you switched on to Switchfoot?
Let's see. I want to say, oh gosh, I can't remember. I couldn't drive. I remember that. I think Kyle Brock, my one of my best friends, he was already listening to him, which was A Way to Be Human. And I really didn't know much about Switchfoot. I didn't really know about Legend of Chin or any of that, what it means. That all those, I think, 3 albums before that, I didn't really know much about them. But I got hooked on them with The Beautiful Letdown, which I think everybody did. That was kind of like their breakout album, even though Meant to Live was on an album before, and they just redone it and redubbed it for this one. It started there. I know, I can't think of his last name, but his name was Jacob. And he also skateboarding. I tried that for a little while too. So I've done a lot of things. And he was listening to a band called Emery, which is a Christian kind of hardcore / rock band. And then that was also in line with Switchfoot. They wasn't considered hardcore, but they were considered rock and alternative. So it kind of in line with that. And so I got started with that. I got started with them there, and then it was just I don't know, it was something about the music. John Foreman has a way of actually singing a song that isn't always repetitive chorus. Some of his stuff is kind of, it'll have the same chorus or same verse, but for the most part, it's a meaning that starts in the beginning and ends with something, and the way he's able to do that and write songs where he can basically say the whole song is different, like from the beginning up to the end. It sometimes doesn't even repeat itself. It's just a continued thought almost, and so I've enjoyed that. And they've always been good. And Switchfoot's always been the band that has been in every high and every low in my life. So I've always had them there. It's kind of been that. When you're younger, I know as you get older, people are the younger crowds like, you don't understand me, you don't get me. But for me, music was an escape from a lot of things. I was able to kind of put in earbuds, listen, and be okay. And a lot of the times, Switchfoot was that. So I've enjoyed Switchfoot ever since then. They're still putting out stuff and still doing stuff, and it's all been good. John Foreman has a Christian background, so does the rest of them. And he's spoken about a lot of things, and he's been able to, through his music, speak about Christ. And he may never say Christ in every song, but if you look for it, you can find the faith in every song. And I've enjoyed it. And he's also, music is one of those tools too that gets stuff said that other people don't want to say, and he's been able to do that too. And it's been really cool. So I've enjoyed him along the way, all the way to Native Tongue, which is their last album they put out. Now he's doing what he calls isolation music, where times where he goes in and he sings old songs or sings with other bands, and it's been kind of cool to see that stuff. But so it started with back then, and I remember riding to school, and the guy that I would ride to school with, and his mom would pick me up, and he would be listening to either Switchfoot or Emery, and I'd be listening to the same, and that's where it kind of happened for me with Switchfoot.
I mean, that's cool. It's really awesome to hear like how the music has sort of been with you through certain times in your life, and the highs and the lows. all that. And I think that statement relates to a lot of people when it comes to music, because whether it's Switchfoot or literally just throw a dart at the wall with a bunch of bands' names,
Yeah.
I'm sure that band has helped someone through some tough times. So it's really cool that Switchfoot has been the band for you that's gotten you through stuff.
Yeah, and it's music's been kind of a weird taste too. Sean Wright, Michael Wright, and Michael Waldron, all of them could really are still in it too, as much as I am. But hardcore music, screamo music, I do listen to that too. I know that's kind of weird for some people, but there's a lot of Christian bands out. Still, some of them are doing that now, and occasionally I'll listen to it. I'm more of an alternative rock kind of person. And so when you're going into a Christian bookstore, which is what we used to do to go get music because it wasn't on Apple, if you had an iPod, you had to most of the time download the CD and then put it on the iPod to be able to listen to it, which was a fiasco in itself sometimes if your computer only had dial-up or something like that. And I remember going into the Christian bookstores looking for those things and thinking I was some kind of rebel when I walked out with August Burns Red or Norma Jean or something like that was these bands that were singing about God even though you couldn't understand them. But music's always been that thing, and I've always go through phases with it, but Switchfoot's always been that one that's lasted for well over 20 years for me.
It's funny that you talk about the transition for music when it comes to like the CD age to the digital age, because I'm sure everyone can relate to the fact that there are just tons of CDs sitting around your house, and you're like, I don't know what to do with these.
I don't want to get rid of them. Like a lot of people now that play video games are okay with downloading them from the Xbox store virtually.
Yeah.
I can't stand that. I can't stand that at all, because for me, I'm used to going somewhere, buying the box, and then doing that. I like to see the games lined up, and just like when you had the CDs, you'd always put the cover in front and the CD on the back. So I still have my CDs. I can't bring myself to get rid of them. Especially some of my favorite bands because of the memories behind them. Call me a hoarder if you want to, but I'll get rid of stuff from time to time like that. But I guess it shows my age, but it's just one of those things.
Eventually, CDs will just come back around like vinyl did and be like that weird hipster thing that people are doing.
Because Switchfoot does vinyl too, just like every other band has. Because now you see the vinyl players, and you see those. I know when I used to work at Emerson, my boss there got his son one for Christmas because that's what he wanted, and he liked collecting vinyl discs, and now they're making a comeback. So who knows? You never know.
So speaking of things you love, talking about Switchfoot, now let's move to something you really, really love, which is your wife, Pastor Tiffany. Now, just to give you a moment to garner some brownie points, tell me 5 things you love about PB to your J.
Oh my gosh. Just like you to bring some crazy words in.
Expect to start making jokes like that.
I know, dad jokes, right? 5 things. That's a hard question. Even having time to kind of think about them. Because I know a lot of people out there going to be like, I can't believe you couldn't spout them off. But the first thing, I know I'll get sappy, I don't care. But she had an amazing smile and eyes. That's the first thing that got me. And also the tenacity of her. A lot of people see her sometimes as this very sweet and just kind of laid back person, but she's very much a go-getter. Oftentimes her sweetness is a downfall because she is so quick to trust and so quick to be okay. But if she wants something, she will go after it and she'll do it. And she never does anything halfway, which drives me absolutely insane, because sometimes in a conversation when I only want a 2-minute answer, I get a 30-minute exposition of what she's going to do. But that does sometimes get on my nerves, but it's also one thing I love is her. So I guess her eyes and her smile is the first one. The second one is her tenacity. The third one is her ability to be able to do everything to its fullest, which is something I don't do and I'm not natured to do. A lot of it's been more revealed because she pushes me to do it, and that'd be the fourth thing would be that she's very pushy, but she's pushy in a good way. She doesn't take crap. So she's quick to say no, and she's quick to say you need to do this, and you better be doing this. So she's very supportive and pushes and spurs. And like I told her the other day, I guess the last thing is I don't understand how she does what she does. So her ability to kind of make what sometimes seems the impossible possible. And I can go on about that kind of stuff with her, but more so now with Nate being born, I'm realizing when in Genesis, I know I don't want to make a sermon out of it, but I want to say this. When Genesis, when God created Eve from Adam and said, you need a helper. Well, it's kind of hard for something to be a helper if it's unable to be equal or able to support in a sense. So for me, when I first got married, it was just marriage. Like, oh, great, cool. I'm married to somebody, and I have somebody, and I'm not lonely anymore, and all the benefits that come with marriage. But after time, being married and learning and different things, you learn that when God created woman to be a helper of man, that woman had to be strong enough to support and help the man. Well, I know sometimes we consider ourselves superior, but in reality, like Pastor always says, the man may be the household, the head of the household, but the woman's the neck who turns it. And that's a very true statement, because without her and without what she does and is capable of, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do, because she is that help. And when any of those looking for a relationship, if the person, the significant other, does not help, that's a pretty good indication that it needs to be be getting rid of. So I believe very deeply that when God put women in men's lives to be a helper, that He put them in there to be a dang strong force, because they got to be able to help. Why would you call somebody to spot you lifting 350 pounds on a bench press if they can't lift it up? That's no help at all. Yeah. They got to be adequate enough to be able to lift that and move forward with you. So that's one thing I've learned over the time with her. So those are my 5 things that I really love about her, and amongst other things. More now so because we were having a kid, and that's more appreciation than many people know early on until you actually have one, or getting close to having one.
Man, that was moving. That was well, you're welcome for that time.
I know, right?
Anyways, now moving on, and speaking of your wife, you are about to have your first child, a young man named Nathaniel, aka Nate for short. Mm-hmm. So, with that being said, where is your mindset about that right now? Like, where is your head at? Are you like nervous about it? Are you excited? Are you like all of the above? Like, what's going through your head right now?
Panic. Panic. My best friend, just him and his wife are expecting now too, and we were texting the other day. Time drifted us apart with me and another one, but it was awesome to be able to have that small conversation with them. I said and ended the conversation with, "Can you believe we're now parents, or going to be parents?" Because looking back, it was just you or you and your significant other or whatever. So it is kind of sheer panic, but not in a bad way. Like, it's not that I'm not prepared. I think there's some things in life you can only be prepared for when they get here. If that makes any sense at all? It's kind of a paradox. But I'm excited. It's been a long journey to get here. It's been up and down, and hopefully I'll have time to share something I haven't shared to very many people, because this plays into where I'm going. I promise I'm going to, as some people say, land the plane. But it's been a long time coming. We've tried for 2 years, and miscarriage along the way, and dealing with that, and dealing with the question of people say don't get too transparent and open when you're a pastor, but I think sometimes that allows people to see a little bit deeper into what faith is. It's hard.
Kind of the point of this, but yeah, go ahead.
It's hard to look at your wife in the face, crying and sobbing in bed, asking you why God is doing what God's doing, and not having a very good, valid answer, because sometimes you just can't answer a question of a God who is supremely more knowledgeable and knows everything, and you can't see the future like He does. But one day we went on our anniversary trip, early February, to the mountains, and I was reading somewhere in Genesis, and it was talking about the meaning of names and what names mean. And out of curiosity, I knew Nathaniel was a biblical name. I knew it was part of the 12 disciples of Jesus, and so I was curious what Nathaniel meant. And when I went to read it, I had to go and wake up Tiffany when I found out. But Nathaniel means in Hebrew, gift of God and God given. So you go 2 years of trying, 2 years of almost just agonizing, waiting and waiting for the time of, will this be the time? Will this be the time? And then when the time finally comes and you feel it stripped away from you, and then it finally gets here, and unbeknown to us, I didn't really like the name at first, and then it finally grew on me, and I said okay to it. Didn't know the meaning until then, that the meaning literally means gift of God and God given. So it was a prayer answered within a name, and it was just a reminder of that faith sometimes always goes before seeing. It's always about what you hope for. It's the confidence, conviction of what we know, and what we have to believe in, what we need to believe in, and understanding our timing is different. So what I'm most, I guess the question, to go back to the question, having known all that and going through all that has built faith up enough to know that as much as afraid of things in this world as I am for Him already, the injustice we see, the lack of any kind of morality in a lot of decision making and a lot of things that we see, and the lack of any kind of appreciation for life, and just the hatred we see, and that's kind of scary. But I also lean back on the faith that I had and had to have exercised in those 2 years. That was then a revelation of what the name meant, which is gift of God, which was a sign of saying, hey, to me it was. I've seen you, I've heard you, and I've listened. As a reminder as I go forward, as much as a panic motive I'm in, and much as this unrest I see in the world, and questions and don't know what's going on in the middle of a pandemic, that God is still and always will be who He says He is. And He will always be a provider, always be a sustainer, and always be a God who answers even when we don't think He's listening. So that's kind of a long way to get to the answer of I had to be taught in the process of trying to have a child that even though I may not see what's coming in the future, God knows it, and as long as I abide in Him and Him in me, we'll be okay. And panic will cease, and I'll learn along the way. As long as He's with me, He'll make my path straight. And Nathaniel may never make all the right decisions, but I never did either. And as long as I instill in him early on what I was taught early on, and taught by mistakes early on, I believe that he'll do what he's going to do. And early on in my prayers, did as one of the mothers in the Bible has done and prayed for Isaac, and that was that she gave him as soon as Isaac was told, and said that he would be, and she said that I would give, as soon as he's there, I'd give him to you. And for me, I took that prayer and I said, God, he's not even here yet, but I'm already saying he's going to do great things, do greater things than I ever could, opportunities I never had, and that he'll do them for you and your kingdom. So I've already kind of dedicated that to him, and understanding that the journey will get him to where he needs to be as long as I'm there to push and prod and poke and aggravate.
It's funny. I always love talking to people who are about to have a kid, whether it be their first kid, their second kid, or their 10th. But it's always interesting how each kid, from what I've gotten from talking to these parents, is that the experience of that child coming into the world is always a different one for every single one of them. And there is an overlying, of course, there's an overlying panic about how am I gonna be at this?
Yeah.
Because you're taking care of another life. But the fact that you're giving the advice really to any parent who may eventually watch this or is watching this, I don't know, but that to trust God even when you're panicked, no matter really what feeling you're having before that kid gets there, is such a powerful statement. And I really appreciate you sharing that.
Oh yeah.
So we're here. We're at the final question.
Okay.
I've been bugging you now for a little bit, picking your brain a little bit, and I feel like myself and everyone watching probably knows you a lot better now. But there may be some gray areas still.
All right.
So, is there anything you want to share with us that we may not know about you that you would like to share? Just some tidbit about you.
So just something they may not know about me. Our person in the back running the live stream is telling me to say that she is the favorite LPYA or member in the church or something, Kelsey Womack. I wish that being called to pastor was like a superpower that you can overcome all and do all. But in fact, I think it's kind of like a thorn in the side. And for some of the people out there, like, oh my gosh, they're going to think that, oh my, he hates this. No, by no means. It's more of a thorn in the side of Paul, when he talks about the what's there. He never says what it is. He just describes this there. But it's always a reminder of who God is, what God's done, and what God continues to do and pushes him to do. I think that is the broken heart of seeing lost people who don't know who Christ is, and then also the broken heart of knowing that people know who Christ is but aren't fully committed to who he is. So for me, that's kind of the thing that drives sometimes when you want to quit, is the notion that there's a job to be done and somebody needs it to do it. And I don't want to be the Saul. I want to be the David. I want to be the one who continues to move forward and doesn't get somebody else gets chosen because I choose to do my own thing. The biggest takeaway from me is that I don't have all the answers. I'm very young in my pastoralship, so I know a lot of people probably never thought I did. But I'm sometimes just as scared as others. Sometimes I'm just as worried as others, and sometimes I have anxiety as others, and sometimes I question just as much. But I always try to allow my questions in my prayer life to always lead me to an answer, because God's not afraid of questions, because he has the answer. Sometimes I think the biggest breakthroughs are when you finally ask the question you're afraid to. When you finally say, okay, there's something there that needs to be asked, but I'm afraid if I ask it shows lack of faith. But in fact, God's probably just waiting and ready to instill something from that question. So, yeah, I guess I'm just a normal human being who, when I go home, I want to go home. I want to see my wife. I want to play a game now and then. I want to watch a movie I've watched 1,000 times again. I want to watch a TV series. I want to do what most people want to do too. I enjoy the time that I have when I get to go home and put on some music and swim. I'm a human being that has allowed God to call and place and use all my faults and all my issues and be able to do what he's called me to do. So yeah, I'm just a normal person too, just called to a different purpose than some others.
Wow. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think that's something a church body, a family will struggle sometimes, and it's really interesting how, like I said in the intro, you are the associate pastor, you are the young adults pastor, and a lot of times people can just see you as that, like it's just the guy who on Sunday morning is running around like a chicken with his head cut off trying to get everything together. But you are a guy who goes home at the end of the day, likes to do the same things everyone else does, likes to sit down with a big old plate of food and just chill and all that. You're not like at home just constantly like eating, I don't know, bread and water or whatever like the biblical based meals are, but you're just a guy who the Lord has called. And I think the inspiration behind that is that that's really everyone. Everyone is just a person that God's called to do something.
Yeah.
And while you may have been called to be on a stage and do all the things that you do behind the scenes, everyone's called to do something, and it's equally as important in the kingdom of God.
Yeah, I want to add too that when I go home, I know ministry never stops. I'm always thinking about the church. I'm always thinking about something. I'm always thinking about stuff that I see on the news, and always wondering what this has to mean, what this means. But ministry doesn't stop when we go home. Your first ministry is given to you when you have a family. And everybody has that. Everybody has a ministry if you have a family. That is your first ministry. So, in fact, I go home to my first ministry, which is my household. I go back to, I forgot what pastor said, what pastor said this, if it was our pastor or somebody I was listening to. But if it's a tragedy that if you can't save your own family, if it's a pretty big tragedy if your wife, and trust me, I don't get it right. I don't do the devotions and the prayers like I should with her. But it's a tragedy if your own household isn't following God, but you're trying to lead another household when you can't lead your first one. So the ministry never really stops. It just takes a different form. So just want to make sure, I do like to go and turn it off because we got to have boundaries. Everybody needs to have some kind of boundary at some point, especially in ministry. If not, you'll get lost and you'll lose the real aspect of what it's supposed to be. Everybody needs that quiet place. Everybody needs that isolation, and everybody needs that time where they can focus on God and themselves and their families and different things. But it never really stops; just kind of changes form. Because ministry is who you are. Ministry is what you do, and it's what breaks your heart most of the time. I guess it's a good thing. The tragedies and the things in the world and what you see needs to break your heart because it breaks the heart of God. If it breaks the heart of God, it should break the heart of Christians.
Well, thank you for the clarification for everybody. I know you really, like with that statement and everything you were just saying, that really has helped fulfill the purpose of this show, which is closing the distance. So, in one last act of closing the distance, just straight down the barrel of the camera,
All right.
say something from your heart to everyone watching. Just whether it be inspirational, whether it be just something that you're feeling that you want to share with everyone, just speak right to them and let them know what's going on.
The biggest thing that's been on my mind as of late is conviction. Not so much the conviction of what you do, but the conviction of what you believe. Hebrews 11:1, really, Hebrews 11 in all is a great faith-filled chapter in Hebrews. But faith is not by what we see, but the conviction of things unseen. So it's the conviction of the faith that we have and the hope that we have. And I think for the challenge that I was actually going to speak about tonight, so a little preview for the LPYA, you need to have conviction in your faith and of your faith. Your conviction needs to be a personal conviction, not a conviction that was handed down from parents or grandparents. It needs to be a conviction of, I know who God is, I know who He is to me personally, and I have that conviction of my faith that when I see a need, I feel it. When I hear a need, I listen, and when I have the opportunity, I speak. Always looking for an opportunity to say something about God. And even if you don't say His name, just an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody that they see God in you. So conviction, have your faith of conviction. Ravi Zacharias always seemed to exude that about him, and it kind of hit me hard when he died, because my first thought, and I'm going to end it with this, my first thought was, who's going to fill the shoes? It was like losing a modern day Paul. Who's going to fill his shoes? And it was just the thought of, I've made them, I've ordained somebody, they just have to answer. And he spoke with conviction and wisdom and knowledge, and that is one thing that the Christians of this time need to begin to do, is speak with the wisdom that is only granted by God, the knowledge that only comes from His Word, and the conviction that comes through a faith that is personal and that has been tried and has been tested. So have conviction in your faith.
Well, thank you so much for those wonderful words. Thank you so much for allowing us to just have an opportunity to get to know you better, to really close the distance. And thank you to everyone watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And like Jay said, always take the opportunity to speak to someone, because maybe in closing the distance between you and that person, you can show them Jesus Christ. Have an awesome day. Love y'all.
See ya.